Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Emerging Brands Podcast with Kelly Bennett. Today, I have someone on the podcast who I feel like I know because I follow their content all the time. I genuinely am a fan of their product. I think it is the best peanut butter on the market, hands down. And I've eaten a lot of peanut butter in my day. And so Lucy Dana, the co-founder and CEO of One Trick Pony, is on. And Lucy, I'm so happy to have you on today.
I'm so happy to be here. I know, I feel like we're internet friends, so it's fun to chat in real life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this. So I know a bit about your backstory, again, being a super fan and following you online. But for someone who's new to One Trick Pony, can you give us the background of the brand and yourself?
Of course. So yeah, my company is One Trick Pony. We make peanut butter that is really, really good. All of our peanut butter is just two ingredients. So it's Argentinian peanuts and Patagonian sea salt. So no added oils, no sugar, no junk in it, just, the pure ingredients. I launched this business with my brother and my sister-in-law. So the three of us are co-founders. And we kind of came into this super naively, I would say. It's not like we had this grand vision to start a company together. I was working at Blue Bottle Coffee as the chief of staff in California, living my life, enjoying my job. And I was kind of starting to think about what comes next. So I was doing a little bit of interviewing, but wasn't really finding anything that I was super jazzed to do. And then meanwhile, my brother and my sister-in-law were running their bagel deli in DC. So they have a chain of, I think they're up to like 14 locations now of a bagel deli
Wow.
in DC and now Denver called Call Your Mother, which kind of has like a cult following. It's super cool and delicious. And so we had always wanted to do something together, but had never really like put any thought into it. And I called my brother one day and was like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. And he's like, well, why don't we do something together? So we kind of then had that in the back of our mind, and we went to Argentina for their wedding. My sister-in-law is from Argentina. And while we were there, we were doing what we do best, which is eating peanut butter wherever we go. And we were trying the local peanut butter, and we're just blown away by the taste and the texture of what we were trying. So started doing a little bit of research, and we're like, why is this so good? And realized that peanuts are actually indigenous to South America. So it's like the original climate where they're supposed to be grown. I think they're a little bit naturally sweeter, and therefore you don't have to add anything to it. So kind of right then and there, my brother was like, "You're looking for a new job. These peanuts are amazing. Danny's from Argentina. We have this connection." And yeah, like 8 months later, we sold our first jar.
Wow. Okay. I love everything you just said. Also, did you all love peanut butter prior to this? Because you said you were just happened to be eating peanut butter in Argentina. Was that something that you all just were naturally into?
I thought we were eating a normal amount of peanut butter, but like come to think of it, we were not. So growing up, my dad every Saturday morning would go and buy us bagels and we would eat it with peanut butter. So like no cream cheese, which I kind of thought was normal. But again, like I had a friend recently be like, of course you started a peanut butter company. Like you were like a peanut butter fanatic household. So in retrospect, yes, but I think I've just come to terms that we are fanatics.
Incredible. So, going back to the bagel and peanut butter, I personally also eat peanut butter with my bagels, so I
Mm.
really love that you do as well. So you all normally ate peanut butter with all your things, especially bagels. So when you were in Argentina, it made sense that you all were trying it.
Yeah, exactly. And I will have you know, in Argentina, so they're a huge producer of peanuts, but peanut butter is not big in terms of like consumer taste. Like dulce de leche
Oh,
and more kind of like sweet things are. So we were also like going out of our way to find peanut butter, like kind of like dusting off, the old jars on the shelf, and it was still amazing. So we had to do some digging to find it, which is kind of like a funny juxtaposition between like the like production of peanuts versus, the consumption of the peanut butter.
that's really interesting. So it wasn't even that popular where you were, but you happened to
Exactly.
stumble upon it. Okay,
Yeah.
so that happened, the light bulb moment, you are like, "Okay, this is incredible. How do we then make this happen?" So it was you said 8 months of that moment to actually selling your first jar. So can you walk us through what you wanted to do differently in the peanut butter category, and then also the strategy around, like, how you did that in 8 months?
Yeah, it's funny. So I definitely like quit my job too early, I would say. Like everyone's like, oh, do it as a side hustle as long as you can. And literally we had the idea and the next day I was like, yeah, here's my 2 weeks notice. So I had a lot of time. Some could say like too much time to kick things off. So I think in retrospect, I probably would have kept my job for a little bit longer just to not have like the financial burden. But the first, yeah. So what's nice is my brother had kind of all these connections from his time building this bagel deli. So we partnered with the creative agency that did all of their stuff to help us, bring the brand to life and kind of like come up with our pony and our name and all of that. So I would say bringing them on board was one of the first things we did, and really think about like how we wanted our brand to come to life. So obviously there's a million peanut butter brands on the market. It's not like we're, coming up with like a brand new product idea, but I think there's kind of like two big categories right now. So there's like the brands we grew up with, the Skippy and the Jif, which they taste great, but they're filled with some ingredients that you may not want
Right.
to eat every day, but they have like these colorful kind of like fun brands. And then on the other side, there's the natural peanut butters that are, more like pure and quote unquote clean, but a lot of these brands are kind of like boring and like earth tones and brown. And like when I was doing a bunch of my consumer research in the beginning, basically nobody was brand loyal. So they were telling me they go to the shelf, they flip over the jar and they look at the ingredients and then they just kind of like buy whatever. So we were seeing an opportunity to make that natural peanut butter with the clean, pure ingredients, but have something that was more playful and fun on the branding side and try to really make people brand loyal to one specific brand, ours. So trying to kind of like play in that in between. So from there, we made our whole brand and then we basically had to like stand up our supply chain. So we knew we wanted to source these Argentinian peanuts, and we ended up actually finding also a co-packer in Argentina. So we currently do everything in Argentina.
Amazing.
And Daniela, my sister-in-law, her sister still lives in Argentina. So she came on board to help us kind of like be boots on the ground and, go to the co-packer and help source the peanuts and, speak Spanish, which is something I can't do. So having her was also instrumental. And then from there, yeah, we had to figure out how to launch. And part of my time at Blue Bottle was during COVID. And the person who was running the e-commerce website had quit like a couple of months before COVID. And they were like, oh, well, we'll kind of like get around to filling the role. Like it's not like an immediate need. And then obviously overnight with COVID, everyone was ordering everything online and the e-commerce website was like going gangbusters. So they were like, okay, you have to run the e-commerce website now. And at the time I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to do this. These are skills like I don't want or need. But in retrospect, obviously now I'm super happy I had to do that because we launched this business online first. And like all this e-commerce experience obviously was super helpful when standing up our website.
Incredible. I like how everyone's skill set just naturally fit into building this brand and business without, like you said, having a really clear plan from the beginning of like, okay, we are going to come together and create a peanut butter brand and this is what we're going to do. It just feels like it all or very organically has come together, which is awesome. I love stories like that. And then the second part is when you first launched D2C online, how was that initial buzz going? You said that you were able to leverage the bagel deli. Was there anything else that in the early stages was really helpful of getting the word out?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think we had like the launch of a lifetime. So when you're like, what would you do differently? I'm like, oh, probably a lot. But we launched in November and we got a lot of advice from people that were like, oh, this is way too close to holidays. Like you're gonna kind of like get swept up in everything else. And we just did it anyways. We're like, we're not going to sit around for like 4 months when we have the product when everything's like ready to go, just so
Right.
that like we can move on from the holidays. But I feel like we did a lot of seeding and gifting with influencers. We were kind of like tapping into all of our networks. Like anyone who knew anyone who knew anyone who had like even the slightest following. We were kind of like harassing them to set us up with them. So we sent out a lot of boxes in the beginning just to kind of get people opening it online. Obviously, Call Your Mother has built an incredible following. So to be able to tap into them on day one was amazing.
Right.
Both from like the social standpoint of posting it with them, but also we got to sell in their stores like on day one, plus sell online. So, obviously, usually it takes a while to get into these wholesale accounts and make the connection. So having them on day one obviously was incredible because it's also in our backyard of DC. Having a place where people could go in and touch the jars and see the product was incredible.
I love how the retail or I should say the brick and mortar then help launch the retail and again, leveraging everyone's resources and what everyone brought to the table in order to get the word out from the beginning. So I know that you've been growing in retail. I see now One Trick Pony in so many of my favorite specialty grocery stores in New York City. How was that trajectory of building in retail?
Yeah, so before I worked at Blue Bottle, I worked at Uber, the tech company. And so I think kind of came into this and I was like, in 1 year, we're going to be in a million stores and it's just going to go so fast. And I feel like the biggest lesson has been that retail is extremely slow. Like everything is just on the slowest timeline that you could ever imagine. So I think that's been the biggest thing is just like telling myself like this is a long, slow journey and it's not going to happen overnight. And so the way that I think about retail, I say like we're currently in like a three-stage plan. And the first stage was the shoppy shops of the world. So the
Right,
places that you're seeing us, the places where it's one door, they have an amazing selection, it's super curated, but it's also from a brand perspective, easy to get in touch with the owner.
right.
So you can DM them on Instagram, you can walk in, you can call, and you can like get in touch with the person who's making the decisions. Versus like if you think about a Whole Foods, you're not going to walk into the store and meet with the CEO or the
Right.
owner of Whole Foods, right? You're like there's so many layers in between. So that was kind of our vision, like get them with these like super curated stores, A, because it's a little bit easier than the big chains, and B, because I think these places are where like tastemakers shop and it's a way to kind of get on people's radars. So that was really stage one. And then stage two has been more like regional grocery chains. So we're in the Fresh Market, which is a big chain on the East Coast. And now we're slowly trying to expand into the third category, which is the national chains. So yeah, it's slow and every grocery store has like its own category review schedule. So we have a couple big ones coming up, but just reminding myself that it's like a slow, methodical process and it's not going to happen overnight.
It takes time. Do you have advice for a founder who's just in the early stages of getting ready to approach the regional retailers and thinking about distribution and just trying to figure out like, okay, what's this part of the puzzle? Because it seems like it's its own beast. Do you have any advice there?
Yeah, definitely. So, the distributor piece of it is like a way bigger strategic piece than I think I realized going into it. So, for people who aren't like so familiar with it, these big grocery chains, they pull from a distributor. And you send your product to a distributor, and therefore, when the grocery store goes to order, they don't have to order from like 100 individual brands. They can order from this one touch point distributor, and it comes on one truck instead of like 100 different UPS packages. So,
Right.
obviously, it's much more convenient for them, but from a brand, it's kind of a big lift to get in with a distributor. So, they take a fee out and there's rules and all of this. So, I would say, like, my biggest advice would be find a regional distributor that's not going to kill you with fees and like trick you into anything. And like, start a relationship with them and they will help you also get into a bunch of these kind of more regional grocery stores. So again, like slow and steady wins the race, kind of like you don't want to go nationwide with UNFI and be in like 100 distribution centers where you can't support, getting product
Right.
there, getting the product off the shelf. So like just find like one regional one that's like more friendly to up and coming brands and work with them until you can kind of like figure out the name of the game, and then you can start to expand more nationally.
That's a great piece of advice and probably one of the biggest pain points I hear from clients and also so many founders that I interview, this piece of the puzzle. So thank you for saying that. I'm going to be sending this to a few people right off the bat. Be like, listen to Lucy.
I didn't even know what a
This is
distributor was before this, so.
yeah, perfect. No, but that's I and that's why I love this podcast and why I love capturing these conversations is that for so many getting into CPG and doing a CPG brand is new, right? And so I know it from more so from the brand strategy perspective, but getting into the nitty-gritty is like a whole other beast. So I appreciate you sharing that in real time, essentially, as you've been learning, because that's why I have the podcast, that we can
Totally.
all skill share and have that peer-to-peer conversation. So
That's
that
what
was perfect.
I always say about CPG, like it's not rocket science. You're making a product and then you're selling the product. Like it's not that
Totally.
confusing, but there's so much inside baseball and like you just don't know what you don't know. So, once you start, obviously all this stuff starts coming to the surface, but like, yeah, listening to podcasts like this, interviewing my friends, like this was the kind of stuff I did in the beginning to learn like what the heck a distributor even is. So,
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And how I learned too, I always listen to podcasts and conversations. Is there any other advice you would share to someone who's getting into this space or they're like, I'm creating a condiment line or I'm creating whatever type of CPG product? Anything else that you would share with them in the early
it
days?
feels totally. It feels basic and I feel like people share this advice all the time, but like just start. And I say that because there's going to be so many changes to your product, to your packaging, to your messaging, to your distribution strategy, to everything that you couldn't like even begin to imagine, but you can't do any of that until you get consumer feedback and you get your product into people's hands. And so like, yeah, you can go out and you could, set up a table and get people to try your product and give you some feedback that way. But like those 20 people aren't going to give you the same feedback as like being in stores and stress testing
Right.
your product like on a major level. So when we launched, our first packaging was horrible. The lids like didn't fit correctly. It was just a mess. And like, I think consumers are a lot more forgiving than you think they are. Like, you don't have to go to market with like the prettiest, best thing ever. And I think it's hard because you go on Instagram and you see all these brands who are like killing it and
Right.
everything looks
Right.
so polished. But if you look back at their first iteration, it was probably pretty bad. So just start because you're going to get all this feedback and you're going to want to change. But again, like you can't change something that you haven't launched yet. So just start.
Another great example of that is Poppy. When they
Yes.
first started, remember like
Yeah.
before Shark Tank and all of that, like I think they're a great case study of getting started and figuring it out. And look at them now, like,
Exactly.
oh my
I
gosh.
I follow this guy on LinkedIn who always posts like the packaging redesigns. And so it's like Poppy,
Ooh,
Olipop. He just did another one that I'm blanking on, but it's like the before and the after. And it looks wildly different. But again, like they wouldn't have known what, call
exactly.
outs to highlight or whatever had they not had the first product on the market.
Absolutely. What is the vision for One Trick Pony? I know that you just also, I have to give a shout out to these cookies that you did as a collab that I'm so excited to try. I love cookies. I love your peanut butter. So beyond excited. But I would love to hear more of like the vision that you have and like adding in a new product SKU and all of that cool next level stuff.
Of course. So I think we have a couple of major focuses coming up. One of them is going to be around our core products, around our peanut butter, around the packaging of the jars themselves. So again, like we just started and the jars were pretty bad and like the lids didn't screw on. And we've like fixed that over the last, year. So now of course we have jars where the lids fit, but the number one kind of like feedback I hear when doing demos and tasting my product is people are always asking about the natural oil separation of natural peanut butter. So we've been thinking about this a lot, and instead of, adding palm oil or something to the product to help reduce the natural oil separation, we're going to be tackling it from a packaging perspective. So kind of thinking about like
Ooh.
how Grazia put olive oil into squeeze bottles because that's how people wanted to use it in their kitchens, like really thinking about this natural peanut butter and the oil separation and how the jar can kind of fix that. So that's all I'll say, but that's coming early next year. So
I
big
love the
things
teaser.
there.
Yes.
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 And then on the other hand, like we don't take this business so seriously. So like if we think of a fun product that we want to do, like the cookies came together pretty quickly with a local DC brand whisked. So I think the cool thing about peanut butter is that it can be in so many different products, savory, sweet. And so I do want to do a bunch of product extensions, and whether that's just fun kind of short-term things we put on our website, like our cookies, or things that can hit the retail shelves. We're definitely in the R&D kitchen, and I have Danny, my sister-in-law. She's a classically trained chef, so she's, cooking up some new things for us.
Incredible. I love it. I'm really, really excited about those cookies. Um, okay, last question. I could talk to you forever. This was so, so great. Most important though, where can we shop One Trick Pony?
Great question. So you can buy One Trick Pony online at onetrickponynuts.com, or we're in 500 stores across the nation. So if you go to our
Wow.
website, we have a store locator. We're in, little stores, big stores, and hopefully more soon.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You all have done such an incredible job, created such an incredible product, and I am so excited to see where it goes from here.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you everyone for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.